Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Monir El Azzouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And for the start of the year, so for the January month, we'll start with an episode where we will try to help you related to your notified body application. And we call this episode like apply now. So you have to apply as soon as possible to your notified body. And we'll explain you why. And we'll also explain you the different, if I can say, the workflow or the different phases for doing that. And for that, I have with me a notified body, which is Chief Sud with Pritam Mekala. So Pritam, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you, in my schedule here, and it's great to be on your podcast. I've heard amazing things about you, and I've seen what all you've done to the medical device community, which you're currently doing, and I'm extremely impressed and definitely proud that there's independent consultant who's doing lots of efforts, answering a lot of questions. So yeah, great to be here. Let's have an exciting discussion.
Great. So, and as said, the idea of this discussion is that you will be like giving us some tips maybe or some tricks of how
Mhm,
to make the best application to notified body. We'll maybe take
mhm.
some example of Chief Suite, but the idea is to be applicable to all notified bodies if possible.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, the people that are listening to us are understanding
Mhm.
how to approach their notified body, how to work with them, and what maybe are some tricks related to that. So,
Yeah.
but before to start, can you just make an introduction of yourself? And first, where are you located?
I'm physically located in Toronto, Canada,
Okay.
but I do support the North American business for our Tubes America division. So, a little bit about me. I'm a product expert. I joined as a product expert at TÜV I've been a product expert for the last 3 years, and my specific speciality is in cardiovascular devices, non-active medical devices. And so I've been doing that for the longest part of time. And yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of clients and consultants, so on and so forth, to learn a lot about the industry from a notified body perspective. So that's been my current role that I'm still working at TIFSID. Previously, I worked in the industry, and I worked at Abbott as a project engineer for a COVID testing kit development project. That was one of my proudest accomplishments. And I also worked as a process engineer, actually on their structural heart division, working on bringing a newest heart valve into European market, which we successfully did. Before that, I did also work for companies like Medtronic as an operations quality engineer, and so on and so forth. So suffice to say that I come in with lots of industry experience, and I do also have a master's and a bachelor's in engineering as well. And I've done lots of research and specialization in biomedical engineering as well. So from an education front, from a qualification perspective, from experience and expertise perspective, I like to think that I do bring in significant amount of it, which has helped me in my current role at TIFSUD a lot. And also, in turn, help the clients as well, because, working with somebody who understands this, I think it's important. So, before we get going, I like to throw a disclaimer here.
Okay.
The views and opinions that I share here are within the podcast are solely my views and opinions, what I've learned. These are my dialogues and my statements, and these are not the views and opinions. They do not reflect views and opinions of TIFSUD or TIFSUD America or any other entity. I wanted to kind of share my experience and what I see personally at TIFSUD, but also at, in general, like you said, applicable to other notified bodies as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Like I said, happy to be here. I'm really excited to have this exciting discussion. Hopefully, we can help answer some of the burning questions that clients may have, and hopefully, we can hold their hands so they can go past the finish line and get their first MDR certificates or convert their MDD into MDR certificates.
Great. Thank you for that introduction, Pritam. And yeah, we understand the disclaimer. And yeah, it's why I said at the beginning, it's not really Chief Suite view. It's really everybody. I mean, we try to make it like for everybody. I wanted to start our discussion with what happened last year about this extension of the UMDR, where normally if there was not this extension, so by the 26th of May 2024, then we'll have to have everybody moving to EUMDR, but there was some decisions now voted last year about the extension. So what is now, can we have a small summary of this, and what is your understanding of this extension for the medical device manufacturers?
Yeah. So I like to preface this by saying it's been challenging for everybody involved, right? It's been challenging for us from a notified body perspective. It's been challenging for customers or manufacturers as well, and certainly consultants like you as well, right? It's been very challenging to understand the MDR and the transition and whatnot, and certainly having going through a pandemic didn't help either. So there have been a lot of extensions. I think the most recent extension was voted, as you mentioned, in March 2023, and there are a couple of details or important points to note. And this is public facing information, so anybody listening to this podcast and yourself as well, you can definitely research this and learn or teach yourself this. So basically, on March 15th of 2023, the European Union extended the EU MDR transition periods, and this extension is for devices transitioning to the EU MDR from the 2024 May 26th deadline. So they extended that transition from 2024, and the extension was in different segments based on the classification of the device. So first and foremost, the high risk class devices, your class threes, namely your heart valves, your neuro devices, and so on and so forth. They have been extended to 26th of May 2026, and for class threes and implantables and class 2B devices, they have extended until 31st of December 2027. And for not implantable class 2B and lower risk devices, they've been extended to 31 December 2028. And last but not the least, all the class 1 devices, they've been extended to 31st December 2028. So as a summary, right, they've been extended from 2024 to 2026, 2027, and 2028 based on your classification of the device and the risk profile of your device and that nature. And they also did another announcement as well. The EU also removed its 12-month sell-off provision
Yeah.
during for the non-transitioning medical devices that comply with the EU MDD. They said that they may now be supplied in the EU after May 2025 until the stock is depleted. I think that I think that allows the customers and the manufacturers to take the sigh of relief, because there might be a lot of medical devices which are perfectly fine, right? Just because your MDD certification is expiring or the extension is expiring, you may run into risk of decommissioning those devices, which quite honestly is a lose-lose situation for both the industry as well as the clients who are supposed to receive as well. So that was another big announcement, which I was particularly happy about, so that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't have to put the customers and manufacturers
Me, t-
at this stress.
me too, because I find this decision to stop everything by that date was not fair. Because for me, as soon as the product is placed on the market, there is
Mhm.
no possibility normally to retrieve that, because at the moment it was placed on the market, it was compliant to the legislation. So at the end, why should we now stop it? And I don't know also, to be honest, how they would have been able to control that, how they would have been able to control every distributor, every importer, to verify that what they are
Yeah.
selling is not that. So it was a bit weird to see that thing, but it's good to
Yeah,
that.
I agree with you, and I think let's go one step further, right? Yeah, we're talking about all these things, like the logistics, as well. But the more important thing is risk, right? Risk factor. So inherently, there's no risk factor
Yeah,
just because the
exactly.
fact that the expiration, the certificate is expired. So if you ask me as an engineer who's always been problem solving and trying to understand the risk profile of something that's happening, I couldn't see any risk that was alluded that you have to take the device out after your certification has expired or the transition period has expired, right? So, like you, I share the same sentiment, and I thought it was completely unfair, right? So, depending upon how big your organization is, the task alone is going to be very large as well. So, I thought with this announcement, I think everybody could take a sigh of relief. Like
Yeah,
we don't have to make sure that the manufacturers have to do that, and the manufacturers don't have to do additional work as well. Which, like I said, quite frankly, has no additional risks to the existing devices, right? So
exactly.
that's the important part. I
So
think the other thing too, one
another.
last thing I do also want to mention is that for the one last bit of the announcement was that obviously the MDD certificates, even though they expire right during the transition period, they can still be valid, and as long as two conditions are met, right? The first condition is you have to apply for MDR certificates with an MDR notified body, right, by 26th of May 2024.
Yeah,
We've been when we were in 2021, we were like 2024 is going to
it's
come
far
like a
away.
long time from
Exactly.
now, far away from now. But we're in 2024. Happy New Year's, by the way, to you and
Exactly.
all the listeners. But 2024 is here, right? And it's already mid-January, and we're going to the May is gonna May the deadline of May is fast approaching as well. So I want everybody here, listeners, to know that 26th of May, 2024 is a critical deadline, right? If you have legacy MDD products, you have to have an application put in with a notified body by that deadline. I think it's really important. I think the other thing too is that it's not it's imperative that you also have to have a signed contract as well, right? You could put in the application with us or several other notified bodies, but that's not it, right? You actually have to have some sort of a contract. Contract kind of establishes what's the work, what's the scope of the project, and perhaps they will list the MDD certificate affected products and whatnot. I think that's the key part of it. So put in your application by 26th of May 2024 and have a contract in place by 26th of September 2024. These are the very critical deadlines. The first thing I wake up in the morning, I always tell myself, these are the deadlines. Don't forget these numbers. And it has to come with second nature because we don't want to put any devices or any companies out there at risk. Yeah.
Exactly. And one thing that is important also is about the fact that you apply, but it's not the date where you will be audited. So mainly you will still have some. So when should they contact a notified body?
Mhm.
Should they wait to have their technical file and everything ready to be audited? Or they can contact you now, for example, today and say, I want to be audited maybe in September 2026 because I have still some time there.
Yeah, I think the critical thing that we have to remember is that for legacy devices, right? For MDD legacy devices, you have to have an application put in and a contract. Those are the only critical things, right? And that allows you to take leverage of the transition period and post expiration period where you can still sell the products and still market the products. Now, that doesn't mean that the audit has to happen by September 2024, right? When you have a contract in place, a notified body like us, we discuss what is the timeline of submissions and when we would anticipate to have your audit and when we would anticipate to have your technical documentation review. So those are the things that will be discussed in the actual contract. And once you understand the deadlines and understand the timelines and you're okay with that, and then you sign the contract, right? So you potentially, and this is a hypothetical situation, so somebody could put in their application by May 2024, and then they could have a contract by September 2024, and they could have an audit, like you said, in 2026 or 2027, right? But I'd like the manufacturers to understand how long that process will take, so that you don't run into risk of expiration or going past your extension period and not still having an MDR certificate. So I would say I would encourage manufacturers to do a retrospective analysis of their timelines and basically build that into the discussion when we have this contract discussion and signing as well. So that's really important. So to go into your question, when should you contact us? ASAP, right? That's the nature of the game. As soon as possible. I'm sure everybody has now looked at the latest MDCG guidance document, that is MDCG 2022-11, revision 1.
Yeah.
And the title, I'm going to quote exactly what the title is. Notice to manufacturers and notified bodies to ensure timely compliance of MDR and IVDR requirements, right? The first topic is reinforced message to the manufacturers to apply for regulation certifications without further delay. And the second aspect, of course, is significant, is a new section to call out the notified bodies to streamline the certification process. So I can tell you from a notified body perspective, we've been doing exceptional work and really hard work uh, to be able to streamline that process. But we would encourage the manufacturers to do the same and to take that with urgency. So we would say apply ASAP today if you can, right? And if you don't have, if you do not have technical documentation ready, you can certainly discuss that aspect of it. But please don't delay having that earlier in discussion with the notified body, putting that application in, signing that contract. Please don't delay that.
Exactly. And just my personal story. So yesterday we received an email from one of our customers that finally got certified for EUMDR. And
Yeah.
it was a long project because then I talked with my team. I said, oh, when did we start this project? Because it looks like it was, and we started 2 years ago. So it was like,
Yeah.
wow, 2 years. So we started two
Yeah.
years ago. we started to make the application. I mean, first to create all the documentation, we send the application, we send the documentation, and there was a 3 rounds, I think, of question and answers, etc. And finally, yesterday we have the go. So yes, it's not like an overnight thing. So it can take 1 year, 1.5 years, 2 years. It depends on your products and the timeline. So don't go for, as you've said, for maybe having the audit in 2027 if the deadline is the 31st of December 2027. So it's mainly also that you have to look backward and make the full planning and everything, because this is a lengthy process where also your notified body, you have to organize some resources. So it's not like you have everybody on site already.
Yeah, so I think the critical thing here to mention is that I believe a lot of manufacturers are probably in a dilemma, thinking that unless we're ready, right? Unless we're close to being 100% ready, having an early on discussion with a notified body is kind of a moot point. It's probably what they're thinking. And I would say that is a false premise. And I would encourage people to have that discussion, early on discussion with the notified bodies as early as you can, as quickly as you can, even though your actual project may not start until 2026 or 2 years from now. And I think the one thing I wanted to highlight is the fact that EUMDR actually has told notified bodies to have a dialogue or a platform to be able to have a dialogue. And I'm happy to disclose that TÜV has already planned and released a platform called structured dialogue. And a lot of clients, even though you're not working with us, even though you don't have a contract, even though you don't have an application in, you can still contact and have a discussion about your timelines, about your regulatory strategy, and so on and so forth in that platform structured dialogue. And I think that kind of gives you that early on access to be able to have a discussion with the notified body, even though your documentation are still not ready yet.
Exactly, because we have a lot of misunderstanding with the manufacturer. They think that everything should be ready before we send the application, because they think that with the application we have to send maybe some documents to prove that you are ready or whatever, but which is not really the case. So you can apply and then send and discuss, as you've said, open the discussion, and then you can explain the timeline that is preferable. And maybe yes, at the end the notified body will say no, it's not possible to do it at that time because we have a restriction in the resources. But it's a discussion that is open for that.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, there's a couple other things too you can discuss with a notified body. You can also discuss the pace of the review as well, right? So a standard review timeline could be perhaps longer for some devices and some businesses and whatnot, but perhaps you can definitely pursue a faster timeline. You could do an expedited timeline, you could do a dedicated timeline, and so on and so forth. We certainly offer that, and I'm sure other notified bodies do as well. So I would say, definitely ask those questions. Definitely, and it starts with engaging with the notified bodies first, right? And then start asking those questions, and then just working through the hurdles one by one, working through the hurdles. Yeah.
So just maybe bring us behind the curtain here in terms of a notified body. So I call you, I give you an application, I call you everything. So what is happening behind the curtain? So do you have like the white pages of the notified body auditors, and then you are starting to negotiate with them who is available, how it's working, what is the timeline, and everything? How is working if I need to organize this audit so that you can promise me to have like the right timeline for this audit?
Yeah. That's a good question. So behind the curtains, right? So what we do is when the first thing we see is an interest for MDR certification from one of our new clients or maybe a legacy device and whatnot. So once we get that, we personally, I try to organize a meeting with the client to understand what their device is. And I think understanding the device, it definitely prepares us to be able to handle the device in the best case possible, in the best case scenario. And once we have that preliminary discussion, we like to receive an application with all your information in there, and perhaps name of the medical device or legacy manufacturer information, and so on and so forth. Once we get all those information, what we like to do is we send you a quote, and that list all these things. That list your timelines and what's included in our service and whatnot. And then we can certainly discuss, like I said, the timelines and the schedules for that specific project. And once we send that to the client has the time to review that. We give them about 90 days from our early quotation to be able to have that internal discussion and reach out to us if they want to move forward with us or not. And once that happens, we actually have a team called special operations team. So what they do is they take the potential clients who have confirmed and signed a contract with us, and then they actually define the project. And defining the project has a lot of components. You actually define the project into our user interface, into our system, and you plan the project with personnel, with schedules, with the whole skeletal structure that is required for that project. That's what happens. And once you're going through that phase, the timelines will be more and more defined and clear. Of course, we're going to communicate with the client, asking them if they're available for a certain period in the year, maybe perhaps first week of May, second week of May, so on and so forth. And certainly have that open discussion with the client to be able to find the optimal time when they have all the resources available at their facility, and also all the resources available at our place as well. When it comes to planning the auditors, we certainly look at a couple of different things. We first and foremost, we look at who is the best possible auditor to be able to audit this medical device, because that's imperative, right? So our critical list starts from, is that auditor capable and authorized to do the assessment on that specific medical device? And after that, we look at a couple of different items. It could be perhaps, like availability. It could be perhaps the region of the availability of the auditor, and so on and so forth. So we look at several other things, and we certainly try to do our best possible to give you the best auditor who has that expertise and knowledge and who's authorized, and also the best possible travel route that the auditor could travel to the physical location of the auditor, so that we could do that in the most efficient way possible. So yeah, though
So
that's what goes on.
So if for example they ask you to go to audit somebody in, I don't know, in the Philippines for example, and you don't have an office there, so you have somebody, you are trying to see who is closer and can go and has the ability, that has the MDR code also, and that can go then to audit. Hey, just a second. Do you need a EU, Swiss or UK representative? Then choose Easy Medical Device. We can represent you and also become your importer. Contact us at eo@easymedicaldevice.com.
Yeah, you can certainly ask these questions. Perhaps you can even pursue a remote audit as well. Again, this depends upon a lot of situations. What I would say is, if in this hypothetical scenario, if there's a client in Philippines, right? If the best possible auditor is in North America, we try to send that auditor, right?
Okay.
But if situations permit, we definitely can do a remote audit for part of the audit, because the audit does come with stage one and stage two, right? Two different stages. So we could do part of the audit remotely, part of the audit on site, or maybe there's an auditor because TUSID is such a multinational company. We have auditors everywhere. We have a very healthy auditing group in India and Asia as well, and Japan. So I'm sure there's some auditors over there. We definitely reach out to our sister divisions to identify if there's a best possible auditor there, in the interest of having the travel timeline reduced and whatnot. So we do pursue that as well. If all those fails, right, you can definitely do, like I said, an expedited project as well, or you could do a remote possibility of an audit for part of the audit. Once you do have that discussion with your project handler, and you have that discussion with us as TUSID. Yeah.
So you talked before about sending the quote to the people. So when they see this big number, so do they have
Yeah.
to pay this number
Yeah.
immediately, or what is the rule here? Because I know some
Yeah.
customer, when they receive this quote, it's like, wow, this is what I have to pay. It's a lot. So
Yeah.
what is the rule here in terms of payments?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways that we pursue the payment. So the one way could be a pre-made payment. Some of the organizations are not, concerned with prepaying for a project. Some people are okay with that, and in some situations we do ask for a prepayment, and depending upon the size of the client, depending upon several other characteristics, right? And for larger clients, we do partial payments as well. So we can even definitely discuss about that. And I think the most the route we pursue mostly is for most of our legacy clients, but we invoice after the completion of the project and the audit. So the numbers to the code we give is usually, I would say, about 90 to 95% accurate to the final quote. The final quote not necessarily going to be more, perhaps it could be less, but the delta is about 5 or 10%. We try to hit that in the preliminary code as close as possible. So yeah, sometimes that would require prepayment. Sometimes it would require partial payment, or in most cases we do a payment invoice of a payment after the actual project is concluded and is completed. So And obviously those discussions, right, you can definitely have those discussions. There's platform like structured dialogue, and during the contract signing and whatnot, you can definitely have those discussions. And there's plenty of opportunities to discuss that. It's not going to be, this is what we give you and you have to pay that and there's no questions asked. No, please ask us questions and help us understand what is your financial situation, what is your strategy, so we can both meet in the middle and perhaps choose the best way possible for both of us.
Okay, no, I think it's a great and fair idea. In terms of clinical, so we know that with the UMDR, one of the most important topic actually is clinical data.
Yeah.
We know that a lot of manufacturers were already having their products on the market under MDD. So meaning their clinical data should have been fine, but suddenly they arrive to MDR and their clinical data is not good enough anymore. So is there a possibility also to, as you talked about this structured discussion, so is there a possibility also to maybe discuss with you about this clinical data before we are really sending you the final technical file, final clinical evaluation?
Absolutely. I think structured dialogue is the best possible way, because when you get into the nitty gritty of those clinical data set, that becomes more so an actual review, right? And or perhaps we could, it would go into the lines of consultation. So which obviously notified bodies are not allowed to do that. So I think the best possible route that clients would have is to pursue the path of structured dialogue. And clinical discussions and clinical topic has certainly been the most requested by a lot of clients, and we've done multitude of structured dialogues already. So we have our experts based in Europe, based in North America, based in Asia, that we can certainly tap into to have that structured dialogue discussion with any of our clients that are interested in having that discussion. I think the best thing we do is to educate the client how we interpret the regulations,
Exactly.
right? And once you take that, you can skin a cat in a multitude of ways, right? But we're going to leave that up to your discretion, and but we can definitely help you understand what our interpretation is from regulation, what we see. And once you understand that, I feel like that will make the client and the customer more empowered to be able to make those decisions and whatnot. And in the structured dialogue, right, the topics, and I can list out a couple topics that we would discuss, but these are not defined or confined to these things. We can certainly talk about regulations and any of the latest updates we have on that specific topic, right? We can talk about the procedures as well, and any application, all the regulatory strategy for that, considering that specific topic. We can talk about schedules and timelines as well. I'm sure there's certain clients out there that clinical studies are still happening. They're doing IDE studies and whatnot. So whatever that might be, right? They're doing perhaps non-European studies or non-European, non-US studies, and so on and so forth. Whatever that might be, we can certainly talk about the schedules and the timelines when that data could be available and when it will be best for them to actually, like bring in a project and whatnot. We can definitely talk about submission strategy as well. So these are just like few topics we can talk about. But I think the big thing to note is, unlike things in the past, notified body is not going to sit there without giving the opportunity to talk with us. We are going to give you the opportunity to talk with us, and in fact have a discussion with us, so that you could choose the best path forward in clinical data sets or regulatory strategies or having an audit or planning for your upcoming expiration of the certificates and so on and so forth. Yeah.
So can we say that this is applicable for any notified body, or it's just you who has built that mainly?
So it is applicable for any notified body. And again, if you look at your latest or one of the latest MDCG guidance documents, which is MDCG 2022-14, when it was established, it specifically talked about structured dialogues being offered or shall be offered by notified bodies. So this is across the board, and regulations have already said that notified bodies have to do this, or at least have to provide the service for the clients. But again, certainly it's at the client's discretion to be able to use that strategy or not, use that platform or not. There might be legacy organizations who are very knowledgeable, right, and who don't necessarily have to use this platform, but there are probably some people who may have to use that. Certainly with the change of MDD to MDR, a lot of people are in a dilemma, in a phase that they don't understand a lot of these things. And I think everybody should use the opportunity there. Like it doesn't hurt to educate yourself a little bit more, right? So yeah, to answer your question, this is This is a rule for all notified bodies that has laid down by EU regulations. So it's not just a TÜVSÜD idea. But I can tell you proudly that TÜVSÜD was one of the notified bodies who have actually rolled out this program first and foremost before anybody else out there. So we have the structure, we have the people, the experts ready to engage in that discussion at a moment's notice.
Great. And just maybe to compare to what is happening in the US, can we say this structured dialogue is comparable? I'm not sure it's the same, but as the Q sub or pre sub for 510K, for example?
It would be, yes. But I think discussions would differ based on the topic as well, right? But I think it is along the lines of that. Obviously people have seen FDA has been a little bit more communication friendly, and EU MDR has been a little bit more communication restrictive. But we definitely want to change that into more open communication. We definitely want to accept or take in some of these things FDA does best, and definitely it is comparable. Yeah.
Great. I had some questions from some people that asked me,
Mhm.
we want to apply, but I still don't have a PRRC actually.
Yeah.
So um, should they have a PRC at the application, or should they have the PRC before certification, or when is the time
Mhm.
for them to have a PRC mainly?
So for some of the audience that may not be familiar with PRRC, let's just go through what PRRC is
Yeah,
actually
exactly. Yeah.
actually is, right? So PRRC, the person responsible for regulatory compliance, as in PRRC, the role of PRRC is mandated by Article 15, both by EU MDR and IVDR. So it is applicable for both MDR and IVDR situations. And these regulations require all manufacturers, right? They are there who are pursuing an MDR IVDR certifications have an authorized representative, and all the other authorized representatives to have a designated employee, right? A designated employee within the organization who is responsible for regulatory compliance with the applicable standards, if that's MDR, IVDR, still. So have a dedicated employee, right? It's a couple of things to keep in note that you can have more than one PRRC.
Yeah,
Depending on the size of the organization, you can have more than one, but the regulation says at least one PRRC. So that's very important point to note. And the other thing too is that the PRRC does not replace a European authorized representative.
yeah,
So the EC rep, right, the EU rep is completely different from PRRC, as in there might be some roles which are probably similar, but there are some specific roles to PRRC. So just having an EC rep or EU rep is not enough or doesn't comply to having the PRRC, right? So
exactly.
that's
I mean,
that's a
it's good that you are saying that, because I have some customers that when I say, oh, yes, we have a PRC at Easy Medical Device, so it's fine. Oh, so then it's fine. I don't need to have one. I say, no, no, you also have to have a PRC within your company as a manufacturer. So yeah, it's two PRC, one with the manufacturer and one with the authorized representative if they are located outside of Europe. But it's a
exactly.
good point here to add.
Absolutely, that's the critical point that you just hit on it there. So for manufacturers that are located outside the EU, right, they must. It's assumed that the PRC should be located outside the EU as well. On the other hand, if the manufacturer is located in the EU, it is also assumed that the PRC is located within the EU as well. So I agree with you what you said. I think that's the right answer in that topic right there. Is that having an EC rep doesn't necessarily qualify for you to comply with that the PRC requirement standard. You could we've seen this in the industry, right? An individual can have two different titles, right? But I think the job descriptions are pretty unique, and they have to understand that. Then they have to lay that down for PRRC and EC rep. Yeah.
Great. So I have also other questions from some manufacturers that ask me mainly, I want to move from one notified body to another. So um, is this something that is easy to do, or what do you suggest in terms of moving from one to the other?
Yeah, I would say it a famous answer, right? It depends, right? So I wouldn't say nothing is easy. It is definitely worth a discussion, but I can tell you that path we laid down here to TÜVSÜD, we certainly made the procedure or the process to be able to follow easily, right? From the inception, when a client reaches out to us and asks us questions saying, "Hey, we're interested in pursuing you as a notified body," and we're letting go and foregoing our existing notified body and whatnot. So once we have that interest from a customer and a client, internally at least, we have made our processes more efficient, and created a pathway so we could take that on just like we would take in any client, right? So there's a couple of topics I would like to mention when a customer is coming from a transfer perspective versus a
Yeah.
new client perspective. First and foremost, like I said, collaborate with us. Have that discussion first and foremost, right? And once you have that, you can complete the application, the TIFSIT application, and then our experts will perform the actual review of the documentation. This may include the on-site visit as well. And after everything's done, we can, after the successful positive outcome of the project, TIFSIT then will issue the new certificate, right? And we certainly also provide platforms where we can engage with your existing notified bodies as well to be able to have that discussion and have that data exchange for existing projects or existing certificates and so on and so forth. So we certainly have the processes, we certainly have the attitude to be able to make that pathway as simply as possible. We certainly are doing our best to play nice with the other notified bodies as well to open up that engage and discussion because certainly our industry is quite small, right? If somebody's transferring to us, there might be a situation where somebody's transferring from us, right? So we try to create that cordial relationship with the other notified bodies to be able to make that transfer process as efficiently as possible as well. So I personally have been I've participated in a notified body transfer myself, and I can tell you all of these things are happen. Right from engaging with the customer and engaging with the existing notified body and actually doing transfer of the documentation and certificates as well. All of those things had happened. At the end of the day, the client and the customer was extremely satisfied and happy, and I think that's what we're going for, right? And no devices were put at risk, right?
Yeah.
So that's the goal of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, for me, that is in the other side, that is listening to what customers are asking, etc. They are all afraid to say, "I want to move to another notified body, but I don't want to say my actual notified body that I will be moving because I'm afraid that he will be mad at me and maybe make it difficult, etc." So, what would you say to those people that are thinking of like there can be a drama out of it?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, we're all here to do work, right? This is, we have to keep our emotions aside and we actually have to do what's best for the organization and best for the device. So let's take a hypothetical situation where the existing notified body does not have appropriate authorized auditors or authorized reviewers to be able to provide you the best service possible. It doesn't hurt you as a manufacturer to be able to seek out a person or the notified body that can provide you that, right? So I think understanding what's at risk here, understanding what's at stake here, it's really important. So if you as a manufacturer has identified that the current notified body and the services that they're providing is not the best, or at least to your satisfaction, you have the liberty to go do that, right? Because we don't want anybody signing up with TILSID or any other notified bodies. We don't want to put that pressure on a company or a client that thinks just because you signed with us, you're stuck with us for the rest of your eternity, right? No, hold us accountable, ask us questions. But if we don't provide you a satisfactory service, you're more than welcome to, leave us, depart us, or more than welcome to depart other notified bodies and pursue notified bodies that may be able to service you better. So I would say, take the emotions out of that question, right out of that picture, and ask yourself that question: am I getting the best possible service? Am I getting the best customer satisfaction? If I'm not, right, are my devices being assessed appropriately? If you're not, I would say do not hesitate to have that discussion with your existing notified body and the potential new notified bodies so that you are more satisfied with the services that you're receiving. Because at the end of the day, this is not a free service. You are paying for that service.
Exactly.
So your satisfaction is very important, right? So if you're not satisfied with any of the services that are provided, please seek out a better notified body. Yeah.
Great. And if now they choose to go to TÜV so where they can do the application and everything, so is there a specific place where they have to go, or if they want to contact anybody at TÜV so what is the process
Yeah.
here?
So definitely email me, right? That would be my first name dot last name at tifsud.com. Or you can message me. You can send me a direct message on LinkedIn as well. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I check my LinkedIn multiple times in a day and whatnot. I have engaging discussions with potential clients, new clients, existing clients all the time. So I do definitely use that platform as well. So I would say email and LinkedIn are the best possible sources for me, sources to contact me. But here's one thing I want to highlight. When you do contact, right? Personally, me, this is what I offer. So if you ask me the question, what makes you different? How can you help my audience, right? So I unequivocally can say that I pledge to provide 30 minutes of my time anytime you want, right? So if you want to just engage in a discussion to understand what is TÜV and what are the services we provide, are we even the right fit, and whatever that is, even before you pull the plug and send the application, I promise you 30 minutes of my time, whenever feasible for you. I'll make myself available, right? And on top of that, I can give you a budgetary quote as well, right? So that way you can see that the budgetary quote is usually has a faster turnaround, faster. I could perhaps give you a budgetary quote within a span of a day or two, maybe even in a week or whatnot. So you can at least put your eyes on what it may cost and what the schedules are like and whatnot. That also I can promise, right? And on top of that, if you do decide to go with us, right, I can also provide you a technical documentation guidance document. So for any of the clients who've never had an MDD or MDR certificate, right? So if they're wondering, if they're thinking that, oh my God, creating the technical documentation is an effort on its own, guess what? I can provide you a guidance document that is released within TÜV to all of our potential clients free of cost, right? I can give you that. You can certainly that's a template, and you can certainly use that template to build your own technical documentation. That will expedite your readiness of your technical documentation. To sum it up, right, I can give you 30 minutes of my time anytime. I will make myself available. I can give you a free budgetary quotation, right? No, with no expectations of whatever that is. And finally, last but not the least, I can give you the guidance document that will expedite creating your technical documentation in a tenth of your time. I promise. I've seen
Great.
it. Trust me, you're going to save so much of your time.
Great. So if you hear that and you don't call Pritam, it's I don't know what will happen. I mean, your speech is great, so thank you for that. It's really great. And yeah, so the idea is mainly that you are really helping the customer, and it's what I liked here. And yeah, I suppose that a lot of customers are really sometimes desperate because they contact notified bodies and nobody is calling them, etc. So now you have the email of Pritam, and you have I will put anyone the show notes, the LinkedIn page. So don't hesitate to contact Pritam and to try
Yeah,
to
and
get.
then one more thing, my LinkedIn also has a contact information. I've actually linked in my work mobile number as well. You can certainly use that to call me. I've had clients call me out of the whim. I'll answer the phone calls as well. So email's not the only way. If you want more direct and immediate response from me, call my cell as well. So they are all on LinkedIn. But if you'd rather want to send me an email, please do that. And when I respond back, I will send you. You will see my signature, and in my signature, you'll have my email and my cell phone as well. Yeah.
Great. So don't hesitate to go to the show notes and to take all the information from Pritam. Maybe you don't need that now, but maybe you'll need that later. So don't hesitate also to contact him later. Okay, Pritam. So it was really great. Thank you again for all the information. I think it was helpful, as I said, to understand more of the situation of notified bodies, TÜV, but also other notified bodies, and then also to guide people on why they should be applying now. Because as we said, we call this episode "Apply Now to Your Notified Body" mainly. So don't hesitate to work with a notified body immediately, and not wait until you get ready or until you have all the documentation. Okay, Pritam. So thank you again, and I wish you a nice day.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being here, and I wish you the best yourself, Monir, and I also wish all your audience a very happy New Year's and a successful 2024, and a faster MDR and IVDR certification.
Exactly. Thank you, everyone. So bye.